would have to decline and vote against Councillor Mulholland's proposal and go with the moratorium that I proposed in the first place.
And finally, before I call upon Councillor Oates, okay, not finally, penultimately, first of all, Councillor Hardy, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did have my hand up earlier when the original motion had been debated.
The decision is yours. Keeper wants to make further comments.
Listen to all.
Now, please, I believe we've had a very good and fair debate, and I would ask you, if you could, please, to speak to the motion rather than
I'll finish off the
divisive. Councillor Silverwood, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know you're going to shout me down or bang your gavel or something and disagree with me, but it has been party politics roadshow tonight. We know exactly, all the people that have attended, because they care passionately about what's going on, can see the way the votes have gone. I will speak to this joke of an amendment, and I don't mean Councillor Mulholland's. The fact he's had to try and add some common sense to this joke of an amendment in the first place, to try and salvage something to protect our communities from what is happening to them. Self-regulation. We've all attended these meetings where they say that HSE go along to these sites or will go along to these sites, and what they're actually checking. They're checking that they're wearing hard hats and high-vis jackets. They're not checking the integrity of the wells. They're not monitoring all the carcinogenic fumes that are being chucked out into the air that we're all breathing in. What also, in this joke of an amendment, what it doesn't say is what will happen when Quadrilla move on. After they've had the rich pickings, what will happen when people are finding their properties where the foundations have cracked and God knows what problems will be going on after all the horizontal fracking taking place? Who picks up the tab for property depreciation? What happens when we can't insure our homes? These are all crucial things that we are absolutely here to protect the residents in our communities. And I'm just appalled that the Conservatives tonight have put a political spin on it. What I would also like to say, Mr. Mayor, after the declarations of interest at the beginning of this meeting, I was really quite shocked and appalled to see councillors that have had to declare a personal and prejudicial interest. But what I am, this is important to an amendment. But what is even worse is to hear that our portfolio holder for the environment, who is now not in the room because of his prejudicial interest, has taken money from Quadrilla. And I really question the fact that he is in a position and he's able to make individual cabinet members' decisions, because we're in that appalling state of a cabinet still until next May. And I really challenge,
would you, I think
I've nearly
you're
finished, Mr.
being
Mayor.
political.
So I really challenge the word environment in his portfolio holder's title and Quadrilla. That's what I'm challenging.
I really don't think that did you any credit. However, no, I like to see fair play and everything debated. Councillor Nash has asked to speak. Councillor Nash.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I enjoyed the passion from the other end. I must say I agree with 90% of what Councillor Rhodes says. I don't think there's a member of this council, whether it's you or I, Mr. Mayor, who is not concerned about the safety aspects of extracting gas should it happen in our borough. Not one of us. We've all heard both sides of the argument, and we're expected as members to make a reasoned judgment. Now, the reason I opposed Councillor Rhodes's proposition is that I didn't think it would make any difference. A moratorium on top of a moratorium. How long is it going to be? A week? 10 days? A month? We don't know. I do, however, find that Councillor Mulholland is talking sense. He is talking something that we can do that will be effective, and that is what we're here to do. And therefore I support Councillor Mulholland's amendment.
Councillor Speak, you say you have a very short question.
Please. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The amendment that Councillor Mulholland has put forward, whereabouts in this, does it go at the bottom of it or does it go at the top of it? I would like to see that it goes the top, because it makes sense. Everything else is like footnotes to me. Can we please have the Kieran Mulholland's wording at the top of this amendment? I'm quite serious about that because it makes sense. I think if anybody reads that, they'll get halfway down, lose the will to live, and they'll miss it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm very glad that you've asked that, because I was just going to ask Kieran Mulholland if he wished to have a
Mr. Mayor, I always like to save the best till last.
Well, would you are, this is the last opportunity for you, because afterwards Councillor Rhodes is summing up.
Yeah, well, if I can speak then.
Yes, certainly.
I'll be advised on that. If officers and members think that it's better at the front, I'll put it at the front. I'm not bothered as long as it's in there. If it's in there, it's in black and white. That's all that matters.
Was indicating the front.
I have to say, when I hear councillors experienced councillors like Councillors Beckett and Hardy making the comments that they have, I feel like I've been transported back in time 4 years to the start of this exercise. I just wish more councillors had come to more meetings and more working parties and sat in and listened to some of the answers. You might not like this, but it isn't witchcraft, it's engineering. You know, some of the comments take me back to reading things about when some of the first train lines came through, that people were saying all the cows would have sour milk and babies would be born deformed. You know, I mean, let's get real. This is an engineering process. What I'm asking for is what I believe right at the start, that this needs to be regulated independently. Everything I've heard from any expert body has said the same, including the Royal Academy and Royal Engineers, and the government just seem to have turned a deaf ear. And being a pragmatist, I don't actually think, or I'd be surprised if this makes any difference. We are merely a consultee. When I started my working party looking into this, I received an email off a a leading county council officer, which was so scathing you wouldn't believe it. It was more or less saying, who do you think you are, sticking your nose into this? But we did. We weren't invited. Were we taking any notice of? I don't believe we were. Would a moratorium have got anywhere? Charlie says we missed a chance. Councillor Duffy, says we missed a chance. I don't believe we've missed a chance, because I think that would have certainly been something that would have been taken no notice of whatsoever. What I'm asking for is specific regulation for this industry that is monitored independently. I'm asking that it's not done by self-policing. One of the biggest disasters known to man at the Deepwater Horizon was purely somebody falsifying documents, using inferior material. And I'm told that had a cement bond log been done, which isn't something that's done by regulation, it's just one of the methods of testing well integrity, had one been done, the fault would have been found. What I'm asking for is regulation. It's what Councillor Threlfall, I'll repeat myself, it's been what Councillor Threlfall's been asking for, it's what the Cabinet have been supporting all along, it's what the official line of Farnborough Council all along, on behalf of the residents, trying to make sure that this is done safely. And I hope I get the support of this room tonight, and let's put this thing to bed. Sadly, and maybe I'm just being a pessimist, sadly, I don't know whether it's going to make any difference. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Odes. This is, I think, the last person to speak before we take a vote. You have the opportunity, please, to sum up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, can I first of all say that I support Heather in asking for Councillor Mulholland's amendment to go at the top of this substantive motion. It's the only part of it which makes any sense. So we have to hope that whoever's reading it will read that part of it. If the original amendment goes forward, I think we'll lose the reader after the second paragraph. I'd also like to thank Kieran for moving the amendment. It's his intentions, I know, are honourable. He supports exactly what I am asking for. He also feels that the regulations aren't good enough, and he feels that they should be, and they should be industry specific. I spent the first 3 years of my married life living in a pit village in South Yorkshire. My husband was doing a PhD at the time, and I saw the impact coal had on communities. It was dreadful. Now, I don't think that fracking will have anything like the same impact on the communities, but if it has any impact at all, it shouldn't do. And that's why I believe it's got to be regulated, and it's got to be thoroughly regulated. I am going to reluctantly support this amendment because my amendment has now been lost. I don't know if people in the room realise that, but the amendment has been lost. And I would rather get something out of this rather than nothing. I'm like Councillor Mulholland, I'm a pragmatist. And I do believe that we should send a very, very strong message to the County Council, because they'll be determining the application, and also to government. And it's high time the government did listen. They are a disgrace, I feel, the way they're dealing with this. They're prostituting themselves for fracking, and I don't think it's good. They should be always ensuring the safety of the population. We don't want to go back to the days of King Coal and the conditions that pervaded then, and we certainly don't want to set up poor conditions for fracking which may injure the health of individuals. So please, I will say I'll support this. I hope other people will support it, and please make it a very strong message to government that this is filed, this is where the fracking is taking place, and we are very, very angry indeed that they're not doing more to regulate.
We're now ready for the final vote. Does everybody understand what we are voting upon, or should I ask the Chief Executive to spell it out? Brenda, shall we have it spelled out? Spelled out, please.
Yes. We have a recorded vote, please, Mr. Mayor.
All in favour of that? Yes, that will be done.
Mr. Mayor, what you're voting on is the amendment proposed by Councillor Mulholland and Councillor Aitken. It amends the substantive motion, which as it stands is that which was proposed by Councillor Goodrich and seconded by Councillor Nash. It amends it by adding, and I've just taken the opportunity to clarify with Councillor Mulholland that the wording is added at the top of the amendment. It adds the following words: Fylde Borough Council request government as a matter of urgency to make sure operational best practices are implemented and enforced through regulation which is specific to high volume hydraulic fracturing and which is independently monitored and is enshrined in legislation. Was onshore in there? Onshore. High volume onshore.
Just a moment. Can we have this clarified as to whether we've got what we want?
Mr. Mayor, we've got what I want. If you want to add offshore and onshore, or onshore, but we are talking about hydraulic fracking in Fylde. I think we all know what we're talking about. I think the government will know what we're talking about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Hodgson.
It needs to be a vital question. I really feel we're ready to vote now.
Can we ask the members of the public, you're very welcome and we're delighted to see you here, but please, could I ask you to leave?
We are stopping fracking for our children.
I don't want...
I'm sorry that...
You are a sellout. The Tories are sellout. You are dinosaurs, you are finished.
I hope the people who...
You are finished. This is a farce. We want
Thank you. I would...
children deserve better.
I would ask that you leave the room, please.
Listen to the people.
16,000 signatures.
If anybody else would like to leave the room, they're more than welcome to. But equally, we do value your presence, as long as you listen to the debate. Thank you.
Yes, I'm disappointed that we've been let down. I think you've been let down on the fracking side by this outburst. I think you've conducted yourself very, very well, and I appreciate the way that the public have helped. So we're now going to the vote.
We have a recorded vote.
What is it? I know, I've got two hands keep flipping up.
The wording was independently regulated, not independently monitored. Can you correct that?
The wording was in agreement with what Councillor Mulholland wanted.
I thought you initially said
Which is independently monitored and is enshrined in legislation.
Through regulation. The word regulation.
And his hand up before now.
Okay. Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's very important that it is down onshore, because there is already regulations for offshore which are completely different to onshore.
Mr. Mayor, I believe the offshore regulations are some old regulations that aren't specific to high pressure hydraulic fracturing. But whatever, I'm quite happy to add the word onshore. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Aitken, are you happy to back that as a seconder? Okay, the word onshore will be in, and we are going to the vote.
I'm being very tolerant. Councillor Hopwood.
No, it does go to the vote.
Just one
I believe
question.
there's been summing up. Do we not have to take the vote now, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, I'm getting that for that. But we've had a very good debate. People are just, I think, wanting clarification before they vote. I'm hoping it's no more than that.
I would just ask, is it possible to put an end date on this? You put a time limit as to get the response from government?
I don't think so.
That's fair enough.
I don't think so. I mean, we're batting, and we're batting strongly, but it's, as it were, not us who set the rules. I now have a recorded vote, please? Could you conduct this? And again, because I don't like voting twice, if that should happen, I'm not going to vote. But I do believe that we've done a good job in what we have said and where we're moving.
Councillor Brenda Ackers. Councillor Ben Aitken. Councillor Christine Ackroyd. Councillor Frank Andrews. Councillor Susan Ashton. Councillor Keith Beckett. Councillor Julie Brickles. Councillor Karen Buckley. Councillor David Chedd. Councillor Maxine Chew. Councillor Peter Collins. Councillor Simon Cox. Councillor Craig Fabian Wilson.
Fabian Craig Wilson.
Fabian Craig Wilson, sorry about that.
Thank you.
Fabian Craig Wilson. Councillor Susan Cunningham. Councillor John Davis. Councillor Leonard Davis. Councillor David Donaldson. Councillor Charlie Duffy. I'm going now, and it's late. Sorry, Charlie. Councillor Charlie Duffy. Councillor Sue Fazakerley. Councillor Gail Goodman. Councillor Nigel Goodrich. Councillor Peter Hardy. Councillor Howard Henshaw. Councillor Paul Hodgson. Councillor Ken Hotwood. Councillor Angela Jakes. Councillor Sharon Little. Councillor Kieran Mulholland. Councillor Barbara Nash. Councillor Ed Nash. Councillor Elizabeth Oates. Councillor Albert Poundy. Councillor Dawn Pressrich. Councillor Louis Rigby. Councillor Elaine Silverwood. Councillor John Singleton. Councillor Heather Speak. And Councillor Viv Wilder. Councillor Karen Henshaw.
Well, clearly that is carried, and I thank you very much for giving this a very good innings. I'm told we have another notice of motion. Can we put that on one side?
No, we'll give a further notice of motion.
I think that's...
We were given notice of a further notice of motion by Councillor Dawn Presswich.
It wasn't seconded, I don't believe.
Draw it off the table. Take it off the table.
You're happy to withdraw it. Thank you very much. Thank you.
It's now in the speakers on the substantive motion.
Do we have to?
You've got those in.
Well, I thought we got there, but I'm told by our legal people we now have a substantive motion in front of us, and we have to at least formally deal with it, even though we know where we're going now. Are there any speakers on that substantive motion?
No, I did indicate that I did give notice of a further amendment when I spoke. Yeah.
Okay. Would you like to present that?
Yeah, given that we are where we are now, it seems ridiculous to me to have the last line, that paragraph in what's been called an amendment tonight. The paragraph that says, finally, this council requests Councillor Oates in her capacity as a county councillor to redirect her notice of motion to Lancashire County Council as the relevant planning body for this. I'd just like that to be removed, basically. I'm sure that Councillor Oates will do that if she feels that she wants to, and I'm probably in the unusual position of thinking that the Conservative councillors will vote for this amendment, because obviously they feel that the original motion was not really a good motion in the first place, so it would be ridiculous if they were suggesting that Councillor Oates takes it to Lancashire County Council. So my amendment is just to remove that paragraph beginning finally.
Do you have a seconder?
Not yet.
Councillor Beckett is the seconder, and Councillor Mulholland, I believe you would like to speak to this.
Just to say, Mr Mayor, I'm not sure how Councillor Mrs Oates feels, because as the County Council are the deciding authority or the planning authority, I would still, if she still feels the same, I don't see any reason why she shouldn't try to browbeat them into a moratorium. Whether they'll take any notice or not, I don't know. Or rather than just deleting it from the footer there, whether we should be asking her as a council if she would pursue the amendment that I put at County Council to try and add more pressure. But you know, I'm sure Councillor Mrs Olds will know what's probably more appropriate in her case. Thank you, Mr.
Councillor Fazakerley, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to express the view that I and probably my colleagues would like to keep in the last part of that amendment. We have felt all along, and really the reason for our alternative notice of motion this evening has been to make the point that Lancashire County Council are the mineral authority, and Councillor Mrs Odes represents us on Lancashire County Council. So I would have thought it was incumbent on Councillor Mrs Odes to take our concerns to the mineral authority. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Odes.
Please get a chance to sum up.
Can I first of all say that I don't represent Fylde at Lancashire County Council. I actually represent Fylde East, which contains Rosica, where the fracking is. I don't feel I need any lessons from the Conservatives on what to do at the County Council. And I also believe that if they couldn't bring themselves to vote for that notice of motion, I wonder why they want me to take it there. I would actually feel I'd get a better hearing at Lancashire County Council, because there are some free spirits at Lancashire County Council who actually vote for things not on political lines but with their heads and their hearts. So please leave it with me to decide whether I take this to Lancashire County Council. Nobody can force me. This council certainly can't make me, and I certainly won't take advice from the Conservatives at Fylde on what I should do at Lancashire County Council.
Could I think what you've said is sound, but you must remember that the suggestion to remove that did not come from one of the Conservative members.
In that case, I'll second Councillor Duffy, Mr. Mayor.
But
I move the vote be put.
okay, we have a vote now which decides whether or not to remove the last paragraph, which is Councillor Duffy's amendment. It is simply to do what we're doing, but remove this last instruction, as it were, which we've heard Councillor Odes speak to, telling her what to do or what not to do. Can we have a show of hands on this one, please? You happy with that? The motion is that we delete that last paragraph relating to Councillor Odes.
You read it out again, please.
Yeah, the amendment is to remove the following. Finally, this council requests Councillor Odes, in her capacity as County Councillor, to redirect her notice of motion to Lancashire County Council as the relevant planning body on this matter. If you're in favour of that amendment, so in favour of having that deleted, you will vote for it. If you want that to remain in the substantive motion, you will vote against the amendment.
And I'm proposing we do that with a show of hands.
Yes, please.
Okay, all in favour of its removal? Thank you. Those who are against its removal?
I don't know whether it's classed as bullying or confidence in me and my ability.
18.
What, to remove it? It's going to be left.
The voting was 17 votes for the amendment and 18 votes against the amendment.
So it remains as the previous substantive motion. Is there anything else, Mr. Chief Executive, that I have to do on this item, or can we put it to bed now?
Hopefully put it to bed.
Can I put this to bed yet?
You will need to vote on the substantive motion again as well, if there's no more speakers.
Can I ask the legal officer, once the vote counted on the top table? Yes.
Right. We now have the substantive motion. I'm losing the will to live, and I'm sure you are. Your advice is to all members as to where we go from here.
We have to vote on the substantive motion.
All in favour?
Right. We have indicated that we're in favour of the substantive motion, and we're
Point
now...
of clarification, Mr Mayor, what was the vote?
17...
Oh, for goodness.
1817.
For or against?
Against the amendment, so therefore we do not amend what was there. We're not amending the amendment. Right. Substantive motion.
Yes, we're ready to vote on it.
Are we all, can we have this on a show of hands? What we're basically doing is ratifying the amendment which we all wish to make, which is to go along with the proposition. All in favour? All against? Anyone against? 1, 2.
3 against. 3 carried.
4, I think. 4, and abstentions, please. Another 4. Hope that adds up.
Yeah, it's clearly carried.
Can I take you, please, to page 11 before anyone else raises another issue on this topic? Thanks very much for the deliberations, and thank you for your patience. You can either stay or leave. The choice is yours.
We're not adjourning. No. We're just giving a chance for people to leave. It's getting late, Kevin.
Members, we're not adjourning. We're simply just giving them a moment to leave.
If they choose to.
Apparently, Alan was there. Yeah, well done, thanks. That apparently Heather has taken money from Heather, but she doesn't see that as being peculiar because she's for the Right. We'll be there by 10. We'll be there before. We'll finish before 10 o'clock.
Quite a few councillors have gone as well.
I know that anti-fracking guy is. I'm going to avoid him and tell him he's not welcome at full council meeting anymore.
No, it's disgraceful. I mean, he's let his own side down, which is what I was trying to say. Right, thank you very much, members. We should have vacated the premises by 9:30. I hope I'm not wrong when I say that we'll endeavour to be out by 10 o'clock, but we are probably paying overtime now. So, page number 11, Governance Working Group. Can I invite Councillor Sue Fazakerley, please, to introduce this item?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I was preparing a few notes for this meeting, I put non-controversial item on this, and I do hope it is a non-controversial item because this little working group has already met several times prior to the referendum. There is, however, a fly in the ointment, that fly being John Davis, who, where is he? Informed me tonight that because he wasn't at the group leaders' meeting, when it was decided who would constitute the governance working party was agreed by the group leaders. Unfortunately, the ratepayers were excluded, not intentionally, I'm absolutely sure. So I would like, in moving tonight's these recommendations, I would like to add an amendment, I hesitate to use that word, an amendment to include a representative from the ratepayer group on that governance working party, and additionally, to maintain political balance, I would like to request an additional Conservative member who I need to confer with the leader as to who that would be. But I am quite happy to welcome Councillor Davis as the ratepayer representative on that working party. I do have a seconder.
Thank you for that clarity. As I understand it, we have 3 recommendations, and what we're being asked to do is to add to recommendation number 1, plus 1 further Conservative member and 1 ratepayer member. Is that clear to everybody? Are we all, everybody in favour?
We have a second.
I'm happy to second the
Thank you. I had all the hands up then.
So, sorry, can we just check whether anybody wanted to speak on that item?
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was just a minor point. During the course of leaders' meetings, it was suggested that we should attempt to run the committee system in parallel with the cabinet system prior to May 15, and this would then identify any problems and hopefully resolve them before we went live. I'm led to believe, having talked to various people, including the Chief Exec, that we might have resource problems with doing this, but I do believe that it should be considered and put on the agenda for the working group, and if it's at all feasible, that we actually do it. So that is an amendment to that.
We have 3 recommendations before us. It would seem to me that we're agreeing broad principles which could have included that. Are you suggesting that something needs to be added to that recommendation?
Well, it isn't included in the items that are on for discussion on here.
To agree the broad principles of the remit and purpose of the working group, I would have thought covered that.
If Councillor Fazackley is happy that that could be encompassed in what's already there, I'm quite happy, as long as it's covered.
She's hearing what you say. Councillor Oates, please.
Yes, could the Chief Exec just make a note of it, please, so that we can be sure it's included on the agenda? And could we also have something on the agenda about consultation?
Thank you. Councillor Buckley, did you wish to speak?
Simply going to agree with you, Mr. Mayor. I think that point 2, to agree the broad principles of the remit, completely encompasses the points that have been made.
Thank you.
Any more speakers?
Any further speakers? Can we take the vote then, please, with a show of hands? All in favour? That's clearly carried. We're now moving to item number 9 on page 14. I think it is Councillor Donaldson who will speak to this item, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm pleased to propose this motion and have a seconder.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak? Oh, you speak it, standing to second it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm seconding.
Lovely, thank you. Does anyone wish to speak on this item? All in favour? Thank you, that is clearly carried. Turning now to item number 10, which is on page 19, and that relates to the Code of Conduct in relationship to town and parish councillors. I'd like to invite Councillor Karen Buckley, please, to introduce this item.
Mr. Mayor, just very briefly, the recommendation members will see on page 19 is in relation to declarations of interest. It says to approve the recommendation of the Standards Committee that the Code of Conduct should be amended to exclude membership of a town or parish council from those interests that could trigger a requirement to declare a personal and prejudicial interest and leave the room on a matter in question. Mr Mayor, I would seek to ask Council tonight to defer this matter, not to push it into the long grass, but to defer this matter, simply to take soundings from councillors. We have tonight declared many interests in because we've been discussing quadrilla. Members have personal interests, some members have personal prejudicial interests. We are a council that trumpets our transparency and openness in our declarations. This to me suggests closing down of such declarations of interests. I would wish, with Council's approval, to seek soundings from councillors. I know this went before the Standards Committee and it was not a unanimous decision to go with this recommendation. I would simply ask for time to consider this a little further and to bring it back. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder to the deferment?
I'm happy to second this appointment.
Thank you. There are a lot of speakers here or possible speakers who are parish councillors. It would seem to me that this isn't so urgent that we shouldn't give it this extra time. Is everybody happy with the proposals? Is there anyone wish to speak? No speakers. Could I put the proposition then that we defer this item for public, hopefully, consideration at the next meeting? All in favour? Thank you. That is clearly carried.
Anyone against?
Is there anybody against? 2 people. Thank you. Item number 11. I hope that somebody is going to propose this item. I think it could well be Councillor Aitken.
Mr Mayor, I stand to propose this planning code. I recommend it. I think it's good guidelines. It's been in front of the Development Management Committee and the Audit Committee, so I recommend it to the Council.
Are you looking for a seconder?
No, I stand to second that.
Thank you very much.
No one to speak? Collins.
Councillor Collins, you would like to speak? Yes?
Yes, Mr Mayor. The Constitution's been mentioned quite a lot tonight, and it's important that we work to it. This is a new planning code. In a lot of ways it's worded quite similar to the previous planning code, but it's pointless having it if we're not going to work to it. Now, I'd like to give you a recent example where this didn't happen. I was invited to a pre-application discussion for the Dobridge Triangle in Kirkham. It's not actually in Kirkham, it's in Newton, it's in my ward. It's for 240 houses, and it's probably the largest single planning application that my ward has seen. I was told the meeting was at 4 o'clock. I arranged covering my shop. I went from one end of the borough to the other, through school picking up time. Managed to get there at 4 o'clock to be told that the meeting was just about to finish. And just in time to hear the Vice Chair of DM, I wouldn't say urge, perhaps advising, not really encouraging, advising the developer to make a planning application, even though the developer had been told that site had been taken out of the preferred options. I wasn't happy about that, but what really concerns me is that subsequently I asked for the written note of that meeting. There isn't one. It says in the old code there should be one. It says in the new code there should be one. There wasn't one. This meeting was arranged by a senior officer, the PA to the Chief Executive and the directors. There were senior officers there, Mark Evans, Julie Glaister. Now they either do not know what's in the Constitution or they choose to ignore it. Now, I don't want to dwell on this, but if this council can't be trusted to follow its own Constitution, what hope is there for when we deal with things like fracking? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think, if I could say, there are 2 points there. One relates to a change of time, and I think that is clearly unfortunate, and I think you were apologised to at the time. I think there had been an email. That shouldn't happen. Unfortunately, these things do. The second is notes of meetings, and it seems to me, Chief Executive, if that is what the protocol says, it should be followed, and I'd be grateful if you draw that to the relevant officers. This, I don't think, changes the protocol.
Can I just add, there was an email, my name wasn't on it. It had been removed
clearly
from the
unfortunate,
original.
isn't it? Yes, I do agree. Councillor Oates.
I'd like to support Councillor Collins. This is the second occurrence in the last couple of months that this has happened. Officers don't seem to be keeping notes, and it is in the protocol. If it's in the protocol, it must be done, and there must be proper notes, and they must be made available to members when they ask to see them, and that isn't happening. I know Councillor Nolte and Councillor Clayton have asked numerous times for copies of notes. It took an awful long time. It took the intervention of the Chief Exec to actually get those notes to those councillors, and it really and truly isn't good enough. I thank the Chief Exec. He does listen and he does respond, but the message has to get through to the planning officers that they've got to stop paying lip service to protocols and actually abide by them.
Thank you. The Chief Executive is taking copious notes, and I think am I right in thinking it's your wish that in the minutes of this council meeting, though that request regarding drawing attention to this particular point of taking notes is recorded?
Mr. Mayor, please, can I just... I'd like to support Councillor Collins and Councillor Oates. Unfortunately, on that particular day, I was at a Ansdell in Bloom judging event. I didn't even finish until after 4 o'clock, so I couldn't even get to support what was going on. I did ask Councillor Oates, and I got the information back from her. But clearly, Mr. Oldfield has listened to what's been said. We will abide by what's in front of us. That the whole idea of a planning code, so everyone knows the regulations and asks